Good morning, everyone. Hope you're having a wonderful day.
Good morning.
I think we are able to start now. If we do start with chanting Namo Tassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. All right. So for today's beginners class, I thought that we could take the roots or discuss about a very, very important sutta, but more than the sutta, the topic of unconditional love, right? Unconditional love, or rather better known in Buddhism as Metta, right? M-E-T-T-A. So let me just see. All right. Now, in Buddhism, the practice of metta is very much something which is really emphasized on. I would with no doubt say that the practice of metta is almost is a core practice within Buddhism, and for a couple of reasons which we'll be exploring today, right? Now, to understand metta and the important role that it plays in the attainments, as what the Buddha refers to as attainments, the saintly path, the attainment of the stream enterer, once returner, non-returner, and what we call an enlightened one or an arahant. The role that metta or unconditional love plays in those attainments, I would say, is a role which is most important, paramount to the practice. Right? Now, the Metta Sutta, I think we do know what the Metta Sutta is, and we've sort of gone through the Metta Sutta, or even have a vague idea of what the Metta Sutta entails, right? But before we move on to the Metta Sutta, I would like to sort of touch on why unconditional love, or for what reasons love is so important in such a sublime practice, right? The Buddha talks about, or rather goes into detail about what creates an existence. And in his definitions of what a human existence is, he divides existence into 5 parts, right? Into 5 parts. The first being materiality, the second being sensations, the third being perceptions, the fourth being mental concomitants, and the fifth being consciousness. Now, in Pali, this is referred to as the Panchaskandha, or the Panchaskandha, or in English, the 5 aggregates, right? The 5 aggregates. It is very important that you remember these 5, because it will come up in your study, even if you are to go to another teacher or another monk or anyone who talks about Buddhism. These 5 will keep on popping up in the practice, right? These 5 are more central in the understanding of existence within Buddhist doctrine. Now, the Buddha, when he refers to the 5 aggregates, he has another explanation where he refers to the 5 aggregates of clinging. Now, this word of clinging arises, right? The 5 aggregates of clinging. Now, what are the 5 aggregates of clinging? The 5 aggregates of clinging are when a person clings onto, or being, not a person actually, a being, because this can happen within animals as well, right? Or beings, the woeful realms, all beings who are sort of, who travel the rounds of existence, rebirth, death, right? The rounds of existence will have the 5 aggregates of clinging. Now, what are the 5 aggregates of clinging? It is when one clings on to the 5 that I have mentioned, right? Now, for example, the attachment that we have towards the body appears as the aggregate of clinging towards the materiality. Or the attachment that one would have to one's material possessions would again appear as the aggregate of clinging with regards to materiality, right? When we, for example, if we would say the morning cup of tea, you have a very specific way that you like your morning cup of tea, or how you would like your food, or the way that you would specifically make a certain thing, right? How it tastes. Now, that is a clinging that we have to sensations, right? Sensations, because through the tongue, ear, nose, body, eyes, right? All of these things that we love in through the 5 senses comes off as a sensation, right? A sensation. Now, the attachment. So we have things that we like to feel, places that we like to go, things that we like to eat, the sort of the material of clothes that we like to wear. We have these things. In, we know what we do like specifically as we go through our years of experience. These are the what is known as a clinging towards sensations. Now, these are almost as if these are like the foundation pillars of our mind and body, right? Now, if I am to ask, for example, if I am to ask now, who is Gil, for example, if I am to ask, right? One would, or anyone, actually anyone here, even myself, we would explain or define ourselves by the jobs that we do, the things that we like, the places that we like to travel, the friends that we associate, the families that we have. Now, in one way or another, all of these human experiences that we have associated ourselves with falls under or goes with the 5 aggregates of clinging, right? The 5 aggregates of clinging. The way that you are trained to think in mind, the way that we train ourselves to think in mind falls under the perception, right? Falls under perception. Likewise, the consciousness, the way that we are sort of programmed to think. Sometimes we have people who are very compassionate in nature. Sometimes you have a lot of compassion but not much of patience. Sometimes we have people who have more patience, not much of compassion, right? Then you would have short-tempered people. All the different variations of people with different characteristics, these are brought together by, if you look into it, ponder over it, these are all things that belong within the 5 aggregates, or the 5 aggregates of clinging, right? Now, I would now like to ask, did we understand that? Right? You can just, if you got that, wonderful, right? Would anyone like to ask a question regarding this bit before we move on to the other bit? If you do, you can use the clap emoji to signal. Wonderful. So now when the Buddha, the reason by which the Buddha has introduced 5 aggregates of clinging, the 5 aggregates, he uses the 5 aggregates to help us transcend a physicality of mind, right? A sort of a nature of mind that we are bound or stuck by. He uses the teachings of the aggregate to point to us that this creation or this self that we refer to, the people, ourselves, whatever it is, right? That it is a collection or collective operation of different aggregates which allows us to operate, work, behave, like, dislike, whatever it is, whatever personality characteristics that we might have, that this is a collective operation of these 5 aggregates, and that it is not specifically a self, right? So he, through the usage or the doctrine of the 5 aggregates, he uses this to sort of break down the self-concept that we have been so thoroughly taught, so thoroughly natured in, right? To sort of break that. Now, the aggregates and the 5 aggregates of clinging, right? The aggregates and the 5 aggregates of clinging. I do hope that you have taken down a note of it and sort of had the 5 aggregates in front of you. I think that would be quite important for you to have the 5 in front of you. So the aggregates and the 5 aggregates of clinging. Now, the 5 aggregates of clinging is the reason as to why we are sort of stuck within, or we go through the rounds of rebirth and death again and again and again. This clinging that we have towards the 5 aggregates play or become the foundation for ignorance and all the other mental hindrances to arise, because when we are clinging on to something that is by nature, by intrinsic nature, impermanent, right? We would do whatever within our power to sustain and promote these aggregates to sustain for longer, right? To keep them up, or in a competitive manner, we could say, to sort of make ourselves, because of our egotistical tendencies, to sort of make ourselves look or seem higher than the consciousness or the existence of another being. So we find ourselves, even within spirituality, even within a corporate climate, even whatever it is, we find ourselves in a consistent battle or struggle to be better, right? Sometimes it is with ourselves, but most of the time it is with regards to other people that we associate and live with, right? This is because of this attachment that we have towards the 5 aggregates, right? Now, the practice of metta, how does it then support, or how does it then support our path towards Nibbana? Before we go into that, the Buddha has mentioned that for a person who wishes, yes, Vicky, the 5 are materiality, sensations, perceptions, mental concomitants, and consciousness, right? Again, materiality, sensations, perceptions, mental concomitants, and consciousness, right? Those are the 5. The Buddha, with regard to anyone who wants to practice, or anyone who is interested in progressing upon the path of Nibbana, has spoken of the importance in contemplating the arising, the possessing, and the falling. In Pali, we call this Upada Titi Banga, right? all consciousnesses and all materiality would always have this process operating within them. There would be a time that the consciousness or the material arises, that it possesses for a bit longer, and then it would fall away, and then another arises, right? This process happens constantly. This is what enables us to sort of go through, not to be stuck in one moment, but to live through life, to go through different experiences that allows us to really have different consciousnesses arising and passing away, to be able to take many objects in so fast in a way that we feel as if all of these things are happening at the same time. But according to the Abhidhamma that is taught by the Buddha maintains that there is, in one mind moment, the mind is only able to cognize one element or one object, right? So for example, when we meditate, we might notice that you have a sensation, for example, maybe in your arm here, right? But then you notice that the whole body seems to be silent and only the arm has a sensation. But the next moment you find you observe that your hand has a sensation, right? But now the sensation on your arm has disappeared, right? Now it is something like that, because the mind cognizes one object at a time, The mind cognizes one object at a time, but this happens so fast that we feel like this is all happening all together, right? But when we meditate, it becomes clearer to us that it is only one consciousness that is arising at this specific moment, right? At this specific moment. Now, with regards to the 5 aggregates of clinging, the Buddha says it is of paramount importance that one is able to contemplate regarding the arising and passing away of these 5 aggregates. How? Right, now we are going to come to the metta part. I'm building the foundation, okay? Please be patient. Right, but this is, let me tell you, this is absolutely important if you want to understand the Buddhist practice on, and sort of this is the basis of both samatha and vipassana, especially vipassana or insight meditative practices, right? So how do we observe or contemplate on the arising and passing away of the 5 aggregates? Now, for example, let us take the perceptions, right? Let us take the perceptions. Now, when a perception arises, now let us say, what example could we take of the perceptions? Now, let us say, okay, when we live at home with our families, you know, sometimes you're annoyed with your family or certain members of your family. Sometimes, you know, you're completely in love with them. Right? It is a almost unavoidable emotion, a twist of emotions, right? Sometimes you're annoyed, sometimes you want to give them your whole life. Right? Now this is an emotion that I think all of us, when it comes to family, when it comes to friends, this is something that all of us experience. Now look at that sense, look at that perception, right? Now, one moment, now because of certain conditions, right? You are feeling loved, you want to get up in the morning, do a good breakfast table, you know, all of that, you want to do all of that. And then because of change in those conditions, right? Because of change in those conditions, now what do you want to do? You want to, now you're annoyed, you're upset, you're shouting, you're asking, you know, you want to not see them, you want to go on a break, you want to go on a long walk just to get out of the house. Now look at that shift of emotion, right? Now that is perception. right? There was a changing condition. Because of that changing condition, the perceptions that you held to change. How do you notice this? This is where the awareness in Sati, what we call Sati, awareness, comes in. Where you are aware, you are not on a roller coaster ride anymore. Now, through you being aware, you are taking hold of the wheel and you're saying, okay, this is what is happening. Okay, I understand what is happening. The conditions changed. So now I am being I am a puppet of the conditions almost, right? The conditions change, so I am now reacting differently. By you being aware of that process, that is how one would start becoming aware of the arising, the possessing, and the passing away of perceptions. Your perceptions from a wholesome perception change to an unwholesome perception, or an unwholesome perception change to a wholesome perception. Likewise, we contemplate, or we are aware of this change, of this shift, right? When the conditions change, it changes, the mind changes, when the sensations changes, the perceptions changes. The mind by which you operate, sometimes now with regards to certain experiences of anxiety, panic attacks, anxiety attacks, stress, depression, mild depressive attacks, now all of these things, now when one is aware, especially with regards to a panic attack or anxiety attack, now what would you, or what would a therapist even ask you to do if you are going through? To be aware, to remind, to not get caught up in the influxes of the mind. Sometimes it can be a bit difficult, right? But the stronger your foundation of awareness, the stronger your foundations of mindfulness are, you can take hold of the wheel and remind yourself, look here. Sometimes when you're having an anxiety attack, the whole world can seem like it's shifting, right? Some people go through very strong anxiety attacks where the whole world, or sort of the ground that you're in itself, starts sort of tumbling and turning, right? So that, and at such a time, when you take a deep breath in, let it go, remind yourself that this is only in your mind, it is not really happening, giving yourself another deep breath in, and then grounding yourself, telling yourself that you're going to remain patient and just observe, not having any sort of attachment to the anxiety experience, the anxiety disappears. It disappears. That is the way that therapists would tell you to deal with your anxiety, right? This is mindfulness, this is awareness, right? That is why the more that you practice awareness, the more that you practice meditation, mindfulness, even especially for our kids, and actually for everyone, but especially because sometimes kids sort of dig too deep to it, I think, in certain ways, that they sort of become afraid of it, right? So especially if all our kids was given this training, if your grandchildren were given this training of mindfulness, they would develop such a strong resilience towards mental health, anything regarding mental health, mental illnesses, depression, anxiety. It would be absolutely, the effect would be mind-boggling and tremendous, right? Because it builds such a strong resilience system, which allows you to really have a strong system to cope with any sort of mental illness, right? And mindfulness has the power to do that. Why? Because you are taking the wheel. You are no longer a passenger in your life. You are taking the wheel, right? And who puts you in the passenger seat? The influx of these changing conditions. The conditions change. Just as the best example is UK weather. Right? It changes so fast. Your mood changes with it, right? Your mood changes with it. And we sometimes, being a sort of a person living who was not born and bred in the UK, but who has moved into the UK, I hear the fact that people in the UK are sort of prone to depression or are moody because of the weather. That is not really true. If you would take now some of the other happy countries in the world, the Scandinavian countries, for example, they have lesser sunlight and sunshine through the year, right? But those reported places within the happy index holds that those countries are actually happier in regards, and it is not about the weather, the lifestyle that we have. It's the lifestyle that we have, the lifestyle that we believe is organic. These things dominate, these conditions dominate our mental health, right? And that is why this understanding of the aggregates and how the aggregates operate, right, is given such paramount importance within the practice, because you are given the power to get behind the wheel, right? To get behind the wheel. Now, let's come to Metta, right? Now, what is Metta? Right? Now, what is Metta? Now, can I open the class to a little bit of discussion, please? You know, what do you guys think Metta or loving kindness is? Who would like to take a go? You're more than welcome to unmute your mics and speak. Vicky, would you like to add something or share something?
Loving kindness, one example perhaps would be doing something to support or help someone without expecting anything back.
Okay, without a sense of non-self, really, no? Without a sense of selfishness.
Yeah.
Or, you know, not expecting. Yes, wonderful. Yes. What else? What else could we add? Someone else. Gil, would you like to add something? Michael?
Yeah, it's friendliness.
Friendliness. Okay.
Friendliness towards the world and yourself, mainly.
Okay.
If you get that attitude of friendliness, then that attitude of friendliness is reflected back into the world.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Who else would like to add? Jim, would you like to say something?
Yeah, is it also being kind to yourself?
Kind to yourself, self-love.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Kind to yourself. Yes, kind to yourself. What else?
I think it's also to look at things in perspective, because very often we perceive things in isolation. So if you observe things in perspective and don't get frustrated and annoyed about that, because you might want to have a car, but then you also have a home to live with. They can't even eat food. So if you manage your expectations with a reasonable perspective, that helps you to be grounded and be kind to yourself and kind to others as well.
I think now the internal dialogue is something, I think Ayush connected it to the internal dialogue that we have with ourselves, which is also very, very important. The internal dialogue, the communication that we have, of course, with other people, but more importantly, the internal dialogue that you have with ourselves, right? That's so important. So what else can we add? Keshi, would you like to say something?
I don't think I have anything else to add. Just given what's already been said, I think it's covered all grounds. I mean, I would just say I think it's giving without self-interest. I think potentially just wishing for welfare and happiness of people.
But I mean, if I would ask, why can't we expect something in return? What's so bad about it? I mean, is it wrong to expect a thank you? I mean, I did get up and cook breakfast while you were lazy and sleeping. Huh? What do you think, Keshi?
Hmm.
Interesting.
I don't know. I'll redirect this to Najit and let you know.
Okay. Mike, you want to say something?
Yes. Expecting something back in return, I always thought wasn't part of it. Basically, if you get something back in return, that's a bonus. But the engendering of the feeling of friendliness and goodwill and happiness towards other people is the thing in itself. And if you've got that, it doesn't really matter if they don't return it. Because the feeling you have when you are generous towards somebody, if you are kind towards somebody, that feeling is yours.
Okay.
And it can only be enhanced if they appreciate it.
So thank you, Mike. So today, that is why I thought I'll bring in the 5 aggregates into the Metta discussion, right? Because the understanding of the 5 aggregates then prompts us or tells us why we shouldn't expect anything back. Right? Why should? So because in Buddhism, or this whole practice, actually, I mean, that is what I find so special, because I myself am not a born Buddhist, right? So in my sort of journey into understanding Buddhism, that is what mostly attracted me. You're not expected to do anything. Right? If you want to do it, you can do it, but this is the reason behind it. You know, that is the structure that is sort of followed through the teachings of the Buddha, which was really encouraging to me, right? Personally. So the reason now behind, now Mike said, you know, we usually, with regards to Metta, we do not discuss about the benefit we have. You know, we usually just, you know, it's always been sort of doing it without any sort of why, right? Why? The why is because through the journey that we have experienced, according to Buddhism, we believe in rebirth. So with rebirth, with the amounts of rebirth that we have gone through, we have supported and sort of pushed our egos, our conceit up by always doing things that are good for us, that benefits us. It's always about me, myself, and I, right? Even if you take capitalism, even if you take the way politics work at the moment, the sort of the games that are played, right? All of this. Can we see that there is an egocentric nature in all of these things, right? There is an egocentric nature in all of these natural, or rather economic processes, political processes that governs the world that we live in. Why? Because we have all come through the cycles of rebirth, promoting conceit, promoting egotistical tendencies, right? And the path to liberation, or let's put away liberation for the moment, right? Liberation might seem to some of you all, no, I'm not here for liberation, I'm just here for peace of mind. Okay, let's talk about peace of mind, right? For peace of mind, what do you need? You, first of all, not overthinking, right? Why do you overthink? Now, if you take bipolar, right? If you take conditions such as bipolar, if you take conditions such as manic stress disorder, if you take conditions such as those, why does it sort of flourish in your mind? Because you consistently put yourself through the plight of overthinking everything, right? You do not want to. Now, where does that overthinking come from? From the attachment that you have for a specific object, right? For a specific object. Now, if you would take now people like Richard Branson, people, the billionaires, the millionaires who have, you know, a number of organizations going on, but we are having difficulty and trouble managing one business or managing a household, right? And these people are managing 500 odd businesses, and the guy is on vacation all the time, right? The guy is on vacation, jumping off a helicopter or a plane or going skiing or in an ocean somewhere, whale watching, whatever it is. And now you see, what is that? The ability of a person to let go. And what fuels this now? Now, because with everything that we do now, every morsel of food that you eat without contemplation, every clothing, every article of clothing that you put on your body, everything supports our self-concept in some sort of way. When you eat without mindfulness, you are giving yourself a pleasure. Right? So mentally, you are supporting the pleasure systems of your being, right? So that is going to bump it up, right? So what does Metta do? And why is Metta such a powerful practice? Because Metta is the most important, basic, yet the most powerful, it builds the most powerful foundational practice where we put another person's well-being before our own, right? Another person's well-being before our own. So what happens there? The conceit is not developed. The conceit is not developed. Also, with a lot of scientific study, right? With a lot of scientific study that we have found now, MBCT, MBSR, I do not know if you've heard these words, CBT, we've just done a talk on CBT. We are actually also having a very, very exciting talk coming up in 2 weeks' time on Friday. A fellow of Oxford is going to speak about the newest research with regards to how compassion changes the programming or the neuroplasticity of the brain. It's amazing. All of you have to be there. Right? All of you have to be there. It's going to be an amazing talk given by Dr. Chakrabarty of, again, another consultant psychiatrist. He's younger. He's still working, very polished. So it would be amazing. I've listened to his talks over and over again. He's a very good friend and he is just amazing. And you guys have to experience that. So I am telling you, you have to be there. It's going to be in 2 weeks. It's going to be in 2 weeks on Sunday, right? It's going to be in 2 weeks on Sunday at 6 o'clock, right? Let me give you the date proper. It's going to be on the 24th of Sunday, right? So save the date, right? All the posters, emails will come to you. So with regards to Metta, what happens is we train our minds, right? Out of its natural conditioning, we train our minds to put another person's well-being, happiness before our own. With the newest research in compassion, especially with regards to the Dalai Lama and Matthew Ricard, who is known as the happiest man in the world, who is a Buddhist monk, right? Who is also a Buddhist monk, they have found that it is in sort of having gratitude, doing stuff for other people, that true happiness for oneself lies, right? So now, you might wonder now, we can't all be activists. We can't all be, charity workers. We can't all be people who are social workers. True. But you all might have children. You might have a partner, a husband, a wife. You might have neighbors. You might have family. You might have friends. Now use those people. Now this is how you use those people, right? You make them the object of your metta, of your compassion, because now when you do this, right? Now this, I am not talking about now in being an Asian coming from a cultured sort of Asian background, right? You do know that we have that our cultures are not similar at all, right? Our cultures are not similar. Our cultures are quite different from one another. Sorry. Very sorry about that. Right, all right. So our cultures are very, very different from one another, right? Now, with regards to our culture, right, the Sri Lankan culture that we have, right, the parents or mothers and fathers sort of wholly devote their lives entirely for their children, right? Entirely. Every waking breath, right? Every waking breath is for the children, right? But with that, something that I have personally noticed, something that my monk peers have noticed, is after the children leave. Now, obviously, the children go up. Now, when you go into private education, or, in Sri Lanka, most of the kids fly out of the country for education. Right, when this happens, or if the kids are living in a village area, they would usually sort of move to the city for their studies, right? So what happens now when the kids leave, when the kids are in their own world now, building their own life, the parents feel left out and they feel a sense of loss of direction, right? Now, that is not what I am talking about. Now, that is exactly against Metta. That is not Metta, right? Of course, there is love, and then there is love with attachment. There's love, which is with attachment, and then there is Metta, right? Which does not have attachment. Metta is always rooted in wisdom, right? Whereas love can be attachment based. Now, a lot of modern life coaches, they speak about the fireworks that young lovers feel, the fireworks of love. Right? Now, they say, if you experience fireworks, that is not true love, that is most probably lust. So you need to allow those fireworks to sort of stabilize and to sort of calm down, tone it down a bit, and to then see whether you are really comfortable with this person. Because the fireworks are quite distracting. The fireworks can be quite distracting, right? And distracts you from the reality. What is the reality? The fact being that this person might be, of course, of the moment. Yes, it's very exciting, it's new, it's fresh, and I'm feeling all energetic, but might not be the person for my whole life, right? And that is something now within Metta. What we train ourselves in is to direct our attention outwards, to give another person happiness, give another person calm, still, and bliss. Right? And through that, what happens? The attachment that we have towards the 5 aggregates of clinging, remember? Right? The materiality, the body, the house, the car, all of that, right? All of your fine furniture, your collections that you've done through the years, all of your beautiful china, pieces of china, and your cutlery and your crockery, all of that, the attachment. Now that, the attachment, all of that, this is you, right? If I am to take, if when we go into a person's house, that is the person's house, is the person, right? So when you go into a person's house, you do not go into a person's house and disrespect the person, because you are in the person itself almost, right? Because this is, when you look around, you see the life that that person has lived, right? We associate the house and all the belongings of that person to that person themselves. And then you have the sensations, the things that we are used to, the cup of tea in the morning, how we like our food, right? The massages, how we like to be massaged, how we like to be touched, all of these things, right? All of these things, how fast you like to walk, how fast you like to pace, all of the morning or afternoon walk that you go for, what kind of weather you like to go out on a walk in, right? All of these. And then the perception, the way that you percept, right? The way that you percept your mind. That is why sometimes when you have disorders such as bipolar, etc., sometimes you feel uncomfortable in your skin and you feel very agitated all the time, because it's difficult for you to find a personality that is stable, because you're always shifting, We all have those days when you get up and you're just like, not today. Right? Not today. But the thing is, we would experience, or some of us would experience it, time to time, maybe once every 2 weeks or once a month, maybe, or, something like that. But some others, when you experience it each and every morning, just imagine how sad that is, right? Just imagine how difficult that might be for that person. Right? Because that person himself or herself or the person does not understand who that person is, because the moods are shifting so much, right? So that is why in this practice, having this awareness, if you have children, if you have grandchildren, try to teach them a bit of breathing exercises from the time that they are small. Also, something that I would like to sort of remind you is the only value-based, Buddhist-based, mindfulness-based school in Europe is in the UK, right? It is in Brighton. If you did not go, it's called the Dhamma school, and they are doing a fabulous job. Right? It's only a primary school for now, but they are doing a fabulous job in terms of they teach kids meditation, and it is not a establishment that runs after money like most of these, like some of these private schools. If the parents can't afford it, they allow the parents to volunteer in the school and to pay off the fees through volunteering, which I think is absolutely amazing. Right, which I think absolutely is amazing. Everyone, participates within the school. The parents, the teachers too are sort of given the given advice to be role models to the kids, to act with patience, for parents to always be patient with the kids, to be forgiving. Right, so in a very value-based way, and that has so much of power, and I think UK needs it. UK needs it. UK needs a lot of love. Our kids need to be showered with so much of love, with all the problems that is going on in the world, drugs and all of that. Our kids need a lot of love. And I think this way, to give metta to in a way that we ourselves, we develop, the more metta we give, right? This is a challenge that I'm putting on to you. Practice metta daily. Practice. My recordings are on YouTube if you want a guide, right? Practice metta daily, and what you will experience, you will be so peaceful. You will be so peaceful. And also the person that you're radiating metta towards will also be at peace, right? Acham Brahm says it. It is. Once I gave a talk to a group of they were what kind of physicists? Quantum physicists, right? I gave a talk on Abhidhamma and Metta to quantum physicists, and what they said, and a couple of the physicists came up to me after the talk, and they said, Bhante, what you said was amazing, and I think it has a lot of ground within quantum physics. And there is actually, we do not know too much about it, but there is actually a way where, although the person might not know that you are thinking of them or whatnot, but it has an effect upon that person's electromagnetic waves and how that person behaves and feels. And I have personal experience. Now, let me tell you a juicy story from my past. Right now, when I first became a monk, my mother was thoroughly against it. Right, my mother was thoroughly against it, because obviously she wanted me to come back to Sri Lanka after my studies, and then obviously take over the family businesses, etc., and just take the family legacy forward. Right, and obviously because and also the fact that they always thought that I was smarter than my brother. Right. They were not at all ready to let me go, right? So my mother, so every time that my mother and my brother would have an argument, my brother uses me as a point of conversation to sort of hurt my mother, right? So to say that, our brother became a monk because he couldn't stand you or something like that. the emotional blackmail and all of that. So every time they fight at home, she would call. I was in Burma, so she would call me and she would give me a good blasting, right? As to, why did you have to leave? You left all of this and I have to, put up with your brother who is absolutely horrible and all of that, right? So every time, so I would keep conversations with my mother to a minimum, because every time that I talk with her, my practice goes for a 6, if you understand what I mean. I would have to put myself into self-healing and rehabilitation after one of her conversations. Right? So then, one fine day, it was a bit bad. She was really aggressive, and then as a monk, with all the things that we live with, we are not really into aggression. We are not those kind of people, we are not aggressive in any way. So when a person is aggressive to you, you feel it a little bit extra. So one day I was actually in a bad mood. I was a bit sad actually after a conversation with my mother, and I was listening to a talk by Ajahn Brahm. If you do not know Ajahn Brahm, his full name is Ajahn Brahmanso. He is the abbot of in Perth, in Australia. Perth is I can't remember the name of his monastery, but he lives in Perth, Australia. Very, very famous monk, and has a lot of lovely talks and very nice humor as well, if you want to give some of his talks a listen. So I listened to one of his talks, and he, for some luck, he was also complaining about his mother. Within the talk, he was also complaining about his mother, to say that mothers do not listen to the children, although the children can be, as huge and big as Ajahn Brahm, where thousands of people come to listen to their talks and respect the wisdom. The mothers will not give two hoots about it. The children will always be children, which I think is quite true. Right, which I think is quite true. And with it, Ajahn Brahm spoke of his personal practice, where he radiated metta, right, towards his mother. And he said that it does have true effect. So I was like, okay, I was a bit skeptical, how can that happen? So I started doing it myself. So usually before bed, so this was my time at university. So before bed at university, after studying and all of that, I would make it a point to meditate before I go to sleep. And this was a part of my routine. And the meditation would also include a bit of about 10 minutes of metta or so, loving kindness meditation. So I thought, okay, I'm going to do or set apart a couple of maybe about 3 minutes or 5 minutes of my total meditation time towards, radiating loving kindness towards my mother. So I did that. I did it. I kept to it. I did it every day for about a week. And I now thought, okay, maybe I should call her. I usually don't call her. I try to put it off as much as I possibly can. But I thought, this time I'm going to call her and just see how she's doing, right? And now when I called her after a week of metta, radiant metta practice, just to see how she was, whether, there was any change to her, she was so kind, right? Very accommodating of my practice. And she was going on about, oh, you're my best child. And you know how mothers are. You're my best child and you're nothing compared to your brother. And, I'm so happy that you're a monk. Do you need more money? I can send you more money. Right, all of that. So all of that. So I was like, oh, okay, that's nice. I'm going to keep this going. And I continued for a couple of weeks, and of course the sort of the communications that we had was much more pleasant. There was no negative. And then I thought, okay, then I grew skeptical again. I'm like, is this really happening because of the metta? Or is it just because, my mother probably, maybe it's a good time for business. Maybe my brother is more calmed down these days and they're not fighting as much. Maybe it's other reasons. So what I did was I stopped radiating metta towards her, and I just, just went on my normal practice just to see if it was the metta, right? And I gave her a call after week. My gosh, didn't I get a blasting? Didn't I get a good shelling from her? So I thought, okay, it's probably the metta. So in that way, metta has amazing effects. Another story, actually, we'll be continuing this, so don't worry, we'll be continuing this next week as well. So there are a lot of stuff. We'll be talking about the Metta Sutta next week, so we'll be going a little bit deeper into the Metta Sutta. So because now I've organized all these talks with regard to science, neuroscience, CBT, all on the basis of metta, loving kindness. So it's good for us to have a base on loving kindness. Yeah. So another story is actually one of my teachers who was a long-term meditator. Because of the fact, with my diet, I was in school at this point. And something that so I had gastritis, so much so that it would feel as if I had heart aches and pains, right? So I think, when the gastritis is so bad, it sort of gives you this pain around the chest, which you would usually see as a heart pain. So it wasn't getting well. Right. So first of all, we thought that it was a heart pain. So I got all the heart checkups done. That didn't happen. And then it was gastritis, but the gastritis wasn't going down. So then something that this teacher did was she started she got a bottle of oil, right? Like the oil that you apply on your body, not for sort of massaging purposes, but more for herbal purposes. And she started chanting the Metta Sutta to it, and she was during her meditation, she would keep it in her hand, right? Hold it in her hand, and then she would radiate metta towards the bottle, right? Radiate metta towards the bottle. And she gave the bottle to me, and she said, I've done this for you, right? You apply it once, and you apply it, and then you'll be fine. I said, okay. Right. And I did apply it once. And since that day up to today, I have not had any aches. My gastritis has never been bad, right? To the extent that I developed these aches again. It has never. Now it has been about more than 10 years, right? More than 10 years. It's amazing, right? Something that I advise my devotees and the practitioners who come is sometimes when their husbands, through Corona, there were a couple of people who, whose husbands were sick. So I told them, when you're making them their cup of tea or, whatever, radiate metta towards the cup of tea, right? When you're stirring, when you're putting in the sugar, it really does have an effect. It really does. Right. There was a study done in Japan. Actually, the first study was done in Japan, and then later it was stolen by a Sri Lankan, and then he published that report as his own. But we are not going to talk about that. Right. So the first report was done in Japan, where the study was with regards to Buddhist chanting in water, right? There's a whole book written on it. You can just Google it and you can find it. And it showed that when people chant with regards to, with having metta, loving kindness in their minds, radiating the loving kindness into whatever, that there's a change in the cellular formation of the molecules within the water, and the water becomes or adapts or has more healing properties within it, right? So it is scientifically proven. It is scientifically proven as well. So allow metta to be a part of your practice. The more that you have metta, the lesser the attachment to the 5 aggregates would be. When the attachment to the 5 aggregates have lessened, what happens is you are able to have an open mind, a mind which is not constricted, a mind that is not easily defiled by the hindrances, by anger, lust, delusion, all of these things. You have better control and mastery over your emotions. You are a happier, healthier person all round, right? And you are a pleasure and a blessing to be with as well. People who are around you feel the vibrations. Your vibrations increase, right? Your electromagnetic waves become more and more powerful, and you become a powerful person, right? In terms of energy, right? And that is so important. That is so important. You might even see, right? You might even see when you would, if you are doing your gardening and all of that, you know, you do your gardening with metta, you will notice that there are more flowers than usual when it comes to the time, right? It is a thing. It is a thing, right? There was a study done in America where 2 different plants were placed in a school, and the kids were asked to sort of be rude and bad to one plant, and the other they were asked to sort of say lovely things and be kind to. And they found that the tree that they were kind to was sort of growing very fast, and it was all bushy and all of that. And the tree that they were sort of, you know, rude to died and withered away quite fast, right? Our lives, our relationships are like very similar. Very similar. If we are going on in our relationships with toxic natures in our mind, we are not going to easily be able to enjoy those relationships. We will not be able to enjoy those relationships, but we will be able to enjoy these whatever relationships in our life if we have a sense of loving kindness in our hearts, and we are able to operate with that, you know. And that is so powerful and so necessary, right? So now, do you guys have any questions that you would like to ask? Any questions that you would like to ask? No? Okay. So I think in that case, we can wrap up today's session, right? In that case, we can wrap up today's session. So for the next week, I would suggest that you read the Metta Sutta, right? Read the Metta Sutta, and come. What I would suggest that you read is Pia Tan's translation. I find that translation so amazing, right? With personally for me, but of course it has a lot of background and all of that as well, right? But even if you want to just read the sutta, but if you want, okay, difference between 5 aggregates and okay, so there is a question. So the difference between the 5 aggregates between the 5 aggregates and the 5 aggregates of clinging is when you cling on to the 5 aggregates, it is called the 5 aggregates of clinging, because clinging has arose towards the aggregates. When you are talking just about the aggregates, you refer to it as 5 aggregates, right? So that is the difference between the 5 aggregates and 5 aggregates of clinging. So the 5 aggregates of clinging is what keeps us within samsara, or the rounds of rebirth and death, because it is due to this clinging that we have towards the aggregates that becoming, or the consciousnesses supportive of rebirth linking consciousnesses happen, right? Yes, could you indicate where? Okay, so if I am to paste the link for you, right, I should really have a section of, so this is the link right now. Would you be able to copy it or open it so it doesn't disappear? Right, so that is the link. What I would do is I will have a section for you guys on the website, right, where I can put all of these links in so that you can refer. I would really recommend, you know, using this site for your future studies as well, you know, because this guy, he was a monk, he's in Singapore, his name is Piatan, right? His translations are absolutely amazing. Like some of these translations, when I read them, you know, sometimes it's so difficult to read through. It's like, you know, a real chore to read through some of these suttas, because the translation doesn't have that, you know, that feel of compassion or that feel of like practice, right? And I feel like this guy's translation, although each sutta looks as if like a mini thesis almost, right? And you have a lot of information, although that is so, I feel in his translation there is compassion, metta, and practice, right? Which makes it so much easier and more beneficial to read through, right? So I would personally recommend 2 translations. That is this guy's translation. His name is Piatan. I'm going to just write his name, Piatan. He's from the Minding Center, right? So even if you sort of type in the Minding Center online, you would be able to get it. The other one is Bhikkhu Bodhi. I'm sure you guys know of Bhikkhu Bodhi. Bhikkhu Bodhi's translations are also quite good, right? He has translated the whole sort of canon, Pali canon on this Pali canon into English. So his translations are quite good, but Piatan, I feel, is better. That is my personal preference. So check it out. Maybe when you do read his translation, it could be a little bit heavy for you. Maybe you might feel it's a little bit heavy for you. But if you scroll down, right, when you open a sutta and you sort of scroll down, for example, now let me share my screen with you. Right. Now this is the Sutra on Loving Kindness, right? So now it goes to the history. It you know, it sort of talks about the sutta and the theory behind it, and you know, all what, you know, brings together information from all other areas of suttas. And you know, so if all of this is a little bit too much for you, if you feel that it is a little bit too much, if you scroll right down, right, you find the sutta itself, which is just the Pali, and then you have the translation, right? So if you feel that this whole part is a bit too much for you, what you can do is you can go down to the sutta and you see, you know, you see the translation of the sutta, and even just sort of having this for next time is quite enough. But I will be going through the practice aspects of it and all of that, right? So this is Piatan's hold on, Piatan's thing. Let me just show you in terms of now, if we go to the Minding Center, right, Dhamma Paris, Minding Center, right? So now the sutras will, if you go right down here, now you see Sutra Discovery 1, right? What he has done is he has made translations, right? And he has divided the translations of the sutras into these different. So the sutras with regards to the Buddha and early Buddhist teachings are all here. Then wealth and, oh, there you go, wealth and loving kindness. So if you would like to sort of do further reading on loving kindness, you have it right here. All the suttas, or most of the suttas that are translated, right here to support you to sort of learn the Metta Sutta, what Metta is with the different suttas, right? Now, sometimes something that I've experienced is sometimes finding a specific sutta through Minding Center is difficult. So what I do is usually I go onto Google, and what I do is I just type in, for example, I type in Metta Sutta, right? So Metta Sutta, and then I type in Minding Center or Piatan, right? So I do that, and then directly this sutta or this PDF comes up. So then you click on that, right? So rather than going onto the website and trying to sort of dig out where the sutta is, I would recommend that you use Google to fetch out the suttas, because the references in Piatan, because he has divided into these sort of sutta discovery books from 1 to 40 or so, the Sutta discovery books. So it's from 1 to 89, and some of them are still in progress, right? But I think, for your practice, for your further study, I would highly recommend that you keep using this website, right? And I think it's absolutely available, and the amount of information that you derive is absolutely stunning, right? It's absolutely amazing. So this is my recommendation to you in terms of you going deeper into, and then you can find sutras on different topics such as rebirth, rebirth, impermanence, emptiness. He has divided quite nicely. I mean, he's a monk, and he was a monk, and he was a monk, and he's now a practitioner, and he meditates. So obviously he understands the mind of a person who is trying to go deep into Dhamma. So that is my recommendation to you. I wish you all an amazing day, and do sort of try to go back to the sutta today itself, almost, when your mind is fresh with loving kindness. and go into the suttas and try to read through the sutta. And I will see you all next week. I will keep you all informed of the talk which is to come, which is amazing. And of course we have so many talks lined up of full of these amazing people. So if you have any friends, any family who would like to sort of subscribe to the center, please let them know to go onto our website and to subscribe to the mailing list, and we will send them out the emails. This is actually, I think the Dhamma Center is, the way that I'm trying to mold the Dhamma Center is where we have we have a section of support available for those of you who are interested in developing Buddhism as a spiritual practice because of the cultures, etc. And then we also have the mental health, that part, the therapeutic aspects of it. So I think it is sort of caters to both sort of classes of people, and to understand the therapeutic aspects of it as well as the sort of the spiritual aspects of it for those of you who want to sort of go on to the spiritual. So have an amazing day, and I will see you all very soon. Take care. Goodbye.